Hey everybody, Sam Black of Fortnight Studio here. Thanks for tuning in to the Fortnight Podcast. On the pod, we speak to founders, businesses and designers, focus on their growth, adaptability, innovation, but best of all, it's just a good chat with great people. Today, we kick things off with a great guest in the form of Ben Harper, a sales specialist and founder of lead generation company Meet Hugo. We talk about how the company has grown throughout the pandemic, a quite out there technique for testing, as well as their new website features. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome to the Fortnight Podcast. I'm your host, Sam from Fortnight Studio, and today we have Ben Harper, who's founder of Meet Hugo. Ben, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being part of the start of this journey for us.
Cool, thanks for having me.
So for any of our listeners who kind of haven't heard of Meet Hugo and haven't heard of yourselves, can you just kind of run through your company, kind of how it started, a bit more about it?
Sure. So Meet Hugo is a sales enablement and sales intelligence platform. So we help a whole range of B2B companies to find out about people who have projects that might be relevant for them and help them sort of gain intelligence so they've got a better chance of making sales ultimately. So we work with a lot of creative companies, web design companies, marketing companies, all sorts of professional services as well, though, to help them get more leads and more sales, basically. So we started out in sort of the end of 2018, so relatively new. We're based just outside of Peterborough. We're a team of about 50 people now, which trebled during lockdown, and we're kind of growing quite fast at the moment still. So yeah, that's kind of who we are in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, I heard kind of listening to another podcast and seeing a bit of your kind of PR is that you've done really, really well through the pandemic. I mean, yeah, you've grown kind of exponentially. I saw one article, I think it was maybe dated back in April, where you kind of took on work value of 62 million. I mean, kind of, did you kind of envision this when kind of the pandemic kind of started, or was it kind of, you just changed tactics?
No, I think we didn't really change a lot for the pandemic. I think we, just before it started, so in January time, we just hired a new sales team, new sales manager, kind of invested in, we're confident in our product now, let's kind of push the sales side a lot more. And then obviously February time, we started getting a little bit worried, like everyone else did. But we kind of went, no, let's stick to what we're doing. The signs are good, let's carry on. And we did, didn't furlough anyone or anything like that, and kind of just pushed forwards. And just kind of, took the approach of people are always going to need to make more sales regardless of what's going on, especially during a pandemic when they can't go out to network or they can't go out to, do other ways of kind of building their business. So a lot of people came to us instead, which is great. So when we kind of realized that was what was happening, we started pushing harder and hiring faster and sort of growing from there, really. So yeah, it's been interesting for everyone. Obviously there's been challenges with it as well. But yeah, it's worked out for us.
Yeah. And I think I kind of heard in another podcast I was listening to about kind of your way, how you changed going from a free trial to kind of your pricing model now, and kind of the way and the tactic you did that.
Yeah, so it's a big move. So when we started out, we offered originally offered a 14-day free trial. Then we cut that down to a 7-day free trial, and that made no difference on conversion for us. So then we ran that probably for the best part of a year, and then we went, okay, it's time to. We got a lot of time wasters of that, as you always do with a free trial. You always get people who have no intention of paying and just give it a go. Because of the way our system works, it's not all technology. We've got a manual research team as well, so it takes them time, and you can't really figure out if something's working or not in a week, really. With a platform like this, you have to give it a couple of months to kind of build your pipeline and try and sell to people and see the response and do the whole process. So we decided we want to cut the free trial out, but obviously that was a pretty scary big step. I think at that point we were getting maybe 200 people sign up for a free trial every month. And we thought, are we going to get none if we just cut it off altogether? Signing up at all. So what we did is we spun up a WordPress website on a completely different brand. Tried it on there with nothing behind it at all. Just made a new brand up with the same kind of proposition offering, but without the free trial. Did a little bit of advertising to it, see what happens. And yeah, people start signing up for this random service and paying for it up front. So we're like, okay, right, this might work. So once we tested that, we switched it over and did it on the main site. And yeah, it's gone well from there. It's the best thing we ever did, I think, was getting rid of that free trial, because people are more invested in the products. They've paid a little bit of money. They're keen to make it work, and they've bought into giving it a bit of time, which is what it needs. So yeah.
So was that kind of change quite seamless? Like once you kind of worked out that it was working on the other brands, transferring it over to Meet Hugo, was it kind of, did you have any kind of niggles or anything?
Not too much. So I think we switched it over literally over New Year's going into 2020. So obviously people were kind of off for a week anyway, so we had a bit of time to kind of technologically change it all over. And then we just we left the other brand website up for quite a while and just put a banner on it saying we've been taken over by Meet Hugo and just kind of linked off over there. And it was fine. We just rang the customers who were on that one and said, "You're now Meet Hugo customer," and everyone was like, "That's fine." And yeah, it was pretty seamless, really. We didn't run the trial for too long. I think we had about 10 clients on the other brand. We didn't want to go too crazy, otherwise it would have been a pain. And yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I think the time of year helped, I think, with doing that. Otherwise it might have been a bit more messy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had a look at kind of your LinkedIn profile and seen kind of your background, and there is a kind of, you went from, I think you were working kind of in data for the police at the start, then kind of went into kind of data analyst, business analyst, social media, and I mean, how have you kind of used what you've learned from kind of those previous roles into kind of your kind of company with and your role with Meet Hugo now?
Yeah, I've gone a bit of a different path to a lot of people, I guess. So I think the key role for me was that data analyst. So I was an intel analyst in the police, that kind of era. So I did a history degree, which is very analytical, and then went into analytics in the police, which is all around like analyzing organized crime networks and things like that. So drug networks and people trafficking and all that sort of nasty stuff. But it was a taste of taking data and people and personalities and kind of putting the two together, which just by chance in my career kind of fell really well into kind of the marketing world, because that's what you need to make a persona and make a campaign and bring the whole together. And so that's kind of where my previous company came from, which was kind of a data-driven digital marketing agency. So all those skills kind of came out there, I think. And then I learned a lot about leadership and leading a team there. We sold that company, and then Meet Hugo kind of came around because I was thinking about all the things I've learned before and what the challenges were in kind of running that agency, I suppose. And now we're probably 50% of our clients are agencies, probably realistically now. And we're quite well tailored for them because of that experience. But yeah, so I think all of that's kind of combined into this. But the main thing I think is that all of that history has been about using data, and that's kind of why we're able to kind of make decisions so quickly and pivot and move around and be quite agile, because we're quite data focused as a company. Everything we do kind of follows lean startup methodology, so everything's about testing and learning and seeing what sticks. Being able to kind of have a handle on the data lets us do that. Otherwise, we'll kind of be sort of running in the dark a little bit.
Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, how you're kind of working since kind of all these like kind of forced lockdowns and restrictions, has it kind of changed the way you've kind of interacted with your staff? Have you kind of adapted kind of your kind of the way you worked with them almost?
Yeah, and remote working is easier in some teams than in others. So like our sales team, generally it's okay and they can manage, but they kind of miss the buzz of working together and kind of, you know, having that sales competition element. From kind of a tech side, we're kind of launching a lot of new features and a lot of new products at the moment, which is a lot harder when you're not all in the same room to kind of thrash things out all the time. So I think our operations manager and our CTO do like 12 hours of calls every week together. They're just on the phone all day, which is hard work for everyone. It's, you know, it's a lot easier if you're just face to face. But we've managed, same as everyone else. We muddle through, and you know, we're lucky that we're a digital business. We can do what we can remotely, but also we've got, like, I'm in the office now. I've got kids at home, and I couldn't do this from home. We've got a nice office in the countryside in an old mill. We've got loads of space, so if anyone does need to come in for things like this, it's ideal. So we're quite lucky, really.
Yeah. I mean, same with us. We kind of, before kind of lockdown, we were kind of more remote anyway, but we kind of came into the office once or twice a week. We have offices in Manchester and London. I think the difficulty with us is kind of with meeting clients for those intro calls, especially if we're kind of working on a rebrand or kind of starting their idea generation. It's kind of a lot easier to be there with their team for the day. But yeah, I mean, I think like many businesses, we're kind of just adapting and kind of working with what we've got. Well, I kind of want to move into kind of what you were leading on with your kind of product team. Is that kind of, I've heard that you've got kind of a new site that you're ready to launch, and kind of, I think you got some new features that are kind of ready to release. So if you want to kind of dive into that.
Yeah, sure. So we hired a big tech team back in sort of Q4 last year. We kind of expanded our tech team quite a lot. They've been working kind of behind the scenes on taking Hugo from, to a lot of people, it's seen as a lead gen platform right now. So it's all about get lead, contact lead, see what happens, and that's kind of the end of it. We're turning everything more into a sales enablement suite. So we have a lot more features in there to help people at all kind of different stages do the whole sales process. Basically, is where we're aiming for. So you can kind of do it all within Hugo. First step of that, hopefully end of February. Obviously, these things are always a little bit loose. Hopefully, end of February,
Yeah.
we'll be launching a new website with the initial new features, which is where we'll have a whole raft of prospect data in there and company data. So you can kind of, as well as getting the projects, you can find out a lot about lots of companies, segment them, and kind of find information of your own for your sales teams. And a whole host of features that make it a little bit more CRM-y in terms of deal stages, notes, threaded comments, team access, and all the sort of things you'd expect. That's kind of a big technology step for us to get there, so that things are kind of in the right place, and then the rest of the suite will come hopefully quite quickly off the back of that once we've made that big step. Everything's going to look a little bit different in terms of, we've got a new head of design on board these days who's kind of refreshing everything for us with her ideas, which is really exciting, and everything looks great. So yeah, everyone's pushing hard to get everything out within a month. So lots of people looking pretty tired right now, I think, on Zoom.
Yeah, no,
but we're getting there.
It sounds really exciting. And I mean, with the kind of the new website launch, is it kind of a refresh of your current website, or are you kind of moving platforms?
Moving platforms. So at the moment, the front end is all on WordPress, and our back end tech's on sort of Laravel frameworks and things like that. The website's going on to, I think we're building it in Webflow, from what I understand. It's all custom built this time rather than sort of theme based like on WordPress like before. And everything's been completely newly copywritten, lots of animation and stuff going on in there. It's going to look pretty different. Same branding, we're not rebranded, but everything's going to look a lot more, just the next step for us, basically, a lot more grown up, I think, and a lot more custom. That's kind of where we're going.
Yeah, and I mean, we've joined kind of Webflow as one of the expert partners recently, and yeah, we see kind of the shift between kind of going from WordPress to Webflow. I think it's just it's a lot more kind of customizable in the back end and front end, but it's still kind of very accessible for kind of people that maybe aren't as kind of tech focused. Yeah, no, it sounds really interesting. It sounds really good, and yeah, I mean, I'm excited to kind of see the website myself.
Me too. And I think that's why we're using Webflow, and that it's our tech team can get it all set up and nice, but then our marketing team can kind of still have free reign to change things where they need. So we're not getting 100 tech tickets a week for marketing asking for new landing pages and doing things like that. So I think that's why we've gone that way, which kind of makes sense. So yeah, I'm excited to see it as well. I'm hoping to see some first versions and drafts pretty soon. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, from kind of when you kind of launched the new website and new features, kind of, have you got kind of any objectives or what you're trying to kind of achieve from it?
So we use Mixpanel quite a lot now and track all the events and everything in there from within the app. So we are currently tagging everything up at the moment, I believe, so that we can kind of track what's going on. Key KPIs for us in the main app side are going to be obviously return user engagement and the value people are getting from the actual information that's in there. Front end, we're kind of planning. We measure obviously the conversion rates and things like that as our main kind of metric from our website, what it generates our sales team. So hoping to get a decent uplift from that. We think the main problem with our current website really is that we wrote it. So it's we write it from the perspective of someone who knows what it is. So we're not very good at explaining it necessarily.
Yeah.
So we're getting it externally written this time. So it's hopefully a lot more punchy and a lot more accessible, just easy to understand from the off for a client. So hoping that's going to do some nice things for our conversion rates, kind of the main objective there.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of companies do find difficulty is kind of when you're kind of writing the copy, it's kind of almost like you're in this bubble, you kind of understand it. And even when you're trying to think about, what if someone hasn't heard of this service or this company before, it's still quite difficult. So yeah, I mean, it's good that you're kind of looking at that problem and trying to solve it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so kind of moving on to kind of our little final section, which is kind of just quick fire questions about kind of you as the founder, as an entrepreneur. First thing kind of we want to ask is, are there any resources that you kind of always look at or fall back on if kind of you come across a problem?
A couple of things, I suppose. That one I mentioned earlier, the Lean Startup book, where Eric Ries is kind of our guiding principle book of kind of how should we do something, let's have a look. The rule in the company previously used to be if you can't do it in 2 or 3 days, don't do it. That doesn't quite work anymore. Now we're a little bit bigger, but we're trying still. But also just like having really good relationships and sort of mentors and people like that. So there's other CEOs that I've known for quite a few years that if I'm really stuck on something, I'll give them a shout. And that's invaluable. People at different stages who've done it different ways, with investment, without investment, etc. It's just good to kind of pick people's brains. So I'm in a few really good sort of Slack groups with them. They're great resources for me as well.
Yeah, I kind of echo the Slack groups. I mean, that's where I found you through your co-worker. Okay. So yeah, definitely echo that. Next one, kind of, we just discussed this before the call that you didn't actually, or you couldn't remember. So I was going to ask what your favorite Chrome extension is. And I mean, I said that mine was kind of the tab suspender because my laptop's quite slow. But I mean, if you don't have a Chrome extension, then is there kind of a tool or anything that you kind of use?
Yeah, the Chrome extension ones are hard. I've got loads, but I just don't use them anymore. I used to use ones like the Facebook tag, Pixel Manager, and Google Tag Manager, and ones like that, just to see kind of, is the tracking all set up correctly and things like that when I was doing more analytical work. But now that I'm kind of stepped away from that a bit, I don't use them quite so much. I think in terms of tools, one we use a lot is Baremetrics, which all our transactions are subscription, Stripe, and Baremetrics just a really good tool for dashboarding it, showing all the stats, really easy to share with the team. And that kind of really helps us kind of see where we're at all the time. So that's a good one we use, and it's pretty much free. So it's really good.
Cool. Yeah, good to know. I mean, the next one's probably maybe more personal, maybe you can speak professionally as well. But I mean, when kind of the world kind of goes back to some normality, what kind of is the first thing you want to do?
On an airplane, which could be work and pleasure, I suppose. We've got obviously about 50% of our clients are in America. We've got a team out in the Philippines that we need to go and see. We ran a sales competition here with our sales guys to win a flight out to the Philippines to go and help us kind of do some training over there and meet the team over there. So get on the plane, go away for a few weeks, do a bit of work and a bit of playing around, hopefully.
Definitely. I mean, kind of probably my plan's the same. I mean, this time last year, I was kind of traveling around Southeast Asia. That was cut short. But yeah, I mean, luckily with kind of this work is that it's kind of almost fully digital. So you could technically take your word abroad, go somewhere hot, get tan. It all sounds good.
That's the plan. Yeah, one day.
Definitely. So yeah, I mean, if we want to end on kind of how people can kind of get in touch with you, meet Hugo, kind of what they can expect. Obviously, you've kind of touched on the new features and the new launch. When can they expect that?
So new launch end of February. For now, if you head over to meethugo.com, you can check us out. There's a live demo you can play with just to see what the platform looks like and see kind of what the information there looks like. And our sales team are always happy to give anyone a demo so they can kind of see some relevant stuff for them. If anyone's kind of in the B2B world, it's worth a go because you can sign up for 3 months as a minimum for £449, which is pretty minimal to get. And generally you'll get between 5 and 10 projects and opportunities put into your account every week. So generally most people will win a project in the first 3 months or so and see a decent return on investment for that. We've also got a partnership scheme, which is really good for agencies and people like yourselves, where you can refer in your clients and then the commission on their recurring revenue as they go, which kind of helps them generate leads as well. So that works really nicely as well, which is something we launched in November time. So that's something to check out as well. And then all the new features hopefully start coming out end of the month. And then we've got a roadmap through to about August where we plan to have everything out sort of as an MVP at least is our plan.
Cool. Well, no, thank you for joining me today, Ben.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Sam again. I hope you enjoyed the first pod as much as I did hosting. If you did, please give the pod a follow, review, and share with anyone who'd be interested. I'd really appreciate it.